At AAA, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of AAA's School Safety Patrol program. And I am honored to introduce you all to Karen Guilbeault. She's a past patroller from the 1970s back in elementary school, who went on to do great things. She was the first female in the Cranston, Rhode Island Police Department to advance to the ranks of lieutenant and to captain, and is the first female from that department to attend and graduate from the FBI National Academy. Full disclosure, I met Karen back when she was the sergeant of the traffic division at the Cranston Police Department. And Cranston has a long history of incorporating a community policing philosophy into traffic safety and getting very involved in their local schools in the city. And back then, Karen, you were very supportive of our partnership. We got to install new school safety patrol programs in schools all throughout the city. And I know you always saw the value of working with schools. And, I remember all the great swearing in ceremonies done with the young patrollers in that community, pinning their badges on and having them take their oath to perform their duties faithfully. So I love that this program spans generations. We always stress that the School Safety Patrol program teaches both traffic safety and leadership skills. And Karen, you're our shining example of that. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Diana. I am honored to be a part of this. I really am so grateful to you.
When we look back on the alumni like yourselves, we definitely see a trend where a lot of patrollers go on to wind up in careers in public service the way you did. In fact, Presidents Clinton and Biden were school safety patrollers. It's just amazing to look at that long list of past patrollers. Do you appreciate now, looking back, that having that responsibility to protect your peers back when you were a patroller helped develop leadership skills in you early on, Karen?
Without a doubt. Absolutely. I think at the time, I didn't realize that it was probably my first experience with leadership. All I know is I took it seriously. I was honored that the teachers, because the teachers back then ran it.
Right.
It wasn't as refined as it is now, the program. I was honored that I was chosen, and I took it seriously. From the moment they gave me that orange belt, and
they were orange back then, that's right.
Yeah, and my brother and I were speaking about it, and he was a patroller before me. His was white, so that's how far back his goes.
Wow, yeah.
But yeah, so I took it seriously. I remember really feeling that it was my responsibility to make sure my peers got to school safely every day.
And do you remember what your duties included back then?
Well, I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire, so my duties were quite unique to the program. The town is about 7,000. The population is about 7,000 now, but back then in the 70s, it was about 4,200. So it was a pretty small town. But we had covered bridges. We had multiple covered bridges in our town. And the roads, there was one road to the school. I walked to school in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and I was a patroller in 5th and 6th grade. So I think part of the reason I was chosen was because I was a walker. But part of my responsibilities were that I had to leave early in the morning before the buses got to the bridge. And then I had to stand at the bridge. And because the covered bridge was built in the 1800s, the builders were not worried about buses going over it at that time because horse and buggies were going over it.
Right.
So I had the bus could not go through the bridge with the children on the bus because of the weight restrictions. So I had to stand at the entrance to the bridge, and as the children got off the bus, it was my responsibility as a patroller to ensure that they walked across the bridge in single file on the walkway that was adjacent to the lanes of travel in the main bridge. And then once the last child got across, I walked across and then stood on the other side of the bridge while the kids got back on the bus. And then off to school they went. And then after I waited there until the last bus came, and then I walked to school the rest of the way.
That is a tremendous responsibility for a young lady. That's
it was unique. I can tell you that.
We talk about infrastructure and how infrastructure, is conducive or inconducive to traffic safety. That's such an interesting example. And just also to think about, like I said, how this program in its 100th year this year, it started with, the transition from horse and buggy to Model T cars. And now we're looking at traffic safety issues bubbling up because of, autonomous vehicles.
Right. And, my parents were very active in the town, and they really were the ones that inspired me to really make sure that I always was cognizant of giving back to others in public service. I think part of it was because they lived through the Depression and they knew what it was like to have nothing. They wanted to instill in us that there are still people that don't have what we had, and that we always have to be cognizant of paying that forward. And I without a doubt that the responsibility that I had as a school safety patroller in 5th and 6th grade probably inspired me without me even realizing it. I knew as I had a job to do, and I took it seriously, and I did the job to the best of my ability. But what I didn't realize is that I was building leadership skills, and that just made me want to continue on that path. Now, this is interesting. Even when I started in law enforcement, well, when I was at DCYF, my passion was law enforcement, but I remember thinking, how am I going to have children and a family and be a police officer working 3rd shift? So even in the 80s, that was a consideration for females who wanted to get on the job. Today, it's not as big of an issue as it was back then. So eventually I was able to fulfill my dream and get on the police department. And, everybody who's a police officer pretty much says, I chose police work because I wanted to help. I wanted to give to the community. I'm no different. That's why I chose it, because I really loved seeing positive results and making a positive difference in people's lives. I think that another really important piece of this is I would be remiss if I didn't give credit to my coworkers. I never have worked with more dedicated, just kind, decent people than the police officers at Cranston Police. And I was fortunate to supervise these people because they really knew their job and they did it well.
I primarily work with the traffic department there, but the fruits of the labors are extraordinary in that community. And I recall many years ago, there was a student who was struck by a vehicle walking home from school. And that inspired this movement throughout the city to develop the Safe Routes to School program. And I think that led into a lot more interest in the school safety patrol program. And it's, something that's been held up for more than a decade now in the community. The chief at the time said, we're never going to see this happen in Cranston again, and really meant it. And obviously the traffic department picked that up and made it their mission to protect the children of the community and foster better pedestrian safety skills. And you were a huge part of that. I'd
just like to say, Diane, I don't mean to interrupt, but while we're on that, I want to thank you, because you were a consistent support system for us, putting us in for the awards. We received the Silver Award and the Gold Award during my time as the traffic sergeant. And you were such an inspiration to myself and everyone in the unit. It was easy. It was easy to implement those those programs because we had such an incredible support system between you and Despina Harris at the time, who was at the governor's office on highway safety. I mean, it was teamwork from day one, and it really made a difference, a positive difference in the community.
Yeah, the partnerships are everything. I mean, and
Absolutely.
made our jobs a lot easier as well. One of the things we hear a lot, Karen, is, and I don't want to use the word helicopter parenting, but let's just say it. We walked to school when we were young. We don't see that as much in the world now. A lot of parents, worry about their children's safety, and for good reason. There's a lot more traffic volume than what we used to see. Distracted driving has become a huge issue in the last 2 decades. So do you think, in your opinion, that parents are doing their children a service or a disservice by not kind of getting them out there and walking to school?
That's a catch-22.
Yeah.
I lean towards saying it's a disservice simply because when we walk to school, we learn pedestrian safety.
Right.
By trial and error, perhaps. But we also walked in groups, so we took care of each other. And so the days that you did have to walk alone, you were aware because you didn't have other people, other kids watching you and, taking care of you. The older kids always took care of the younger kids. That's the way it was. However, there was a lot less traffic.
Right.
Vehicles didn't drive as fast because the roads weren't as good. And there was no distracted driving, other than perhaps maybe someone eating or taking a drink, a drink of soda or whatever. So it is a catch-22 for the parents. Texting was not, cell phones weren't invented yet, so texting wasn't an issue, and talking on the phone wasn't an issue. There's a lot more distracted driving than there was back then. So in that respect, I can understand why the parents want to drive the kids to school. However, I think that there is a lot of positive aspects of walking simply because you're getting exercise, you're getting fresh air, you're learning those skills, and if there isn't a group of children that can walk together, an adult can walk the kids to school, and the adult is benefiting from it as well. So, I hate to point to parents and say, yes, they're doing them a disservice, because there is plenty of reason why I could see that they would prefer to drive.
Right. Yeah, infrastructure is such a big part of it too. Like you mentioned, the covered bridges, you really have to know your community, kind of take that test walk with your child, I think, to see, okay, is there a place where the sidewalk ends? Is it, what does the shoulder of the roadway look like? I think a lot goes into the practice. And one of the things that we're working on now is to bring the concept of walking school buses back. I think we often did walk with a group of other children. I remember, meeting up with my friend at a certain corner at a certain time on the, so we could join together and walk to school together. So we're trying to marry the school safety patrol program with the walking school bus concept. So there's a specific time and meeting spot, and that group can go together to get that exercise in, learn the pedestrian safety skills. We'd have a trained school safety patroller leading the group or a parent advisor. And
right.
Yeah, in the communities where that can work, we're really trying to support as AAA those communities and those schools to make it work. So that's kind of an exciting new project for us.
That's fantastic, because what hasn't changed from the 70s is that there's safety in numbers.
Right.
Whether it be safety, pedestrian safety, or safety of other, concerns, other issues that we seem to hear more about today. There's safety in numbers.
The other two most frequently asked questions from our patrollers. So when we go out and visit schools and do the training with the young people, we hear two questions all the time. What do I do if I tell one of my other students, I give them direction and they don't listen to me? We get that question. And we also get, if I see someone being bullied, or if I see another student doing something wrong, should I tell the teacher? Should I tell the patrol advisor? And I'm going to ask you as a leader yourself, and someone who spent many years of your life in a leadership role in public service, what advice would you give to those young people?
Well, I think that there's always going to be challenges no matter what you do. And it starts that young as a school safety patroller. People are not always going to do what you tell them to do. So that trying to resolve that issue is in fact a lesson in leadership. They should assume that, I believe, my advice would be assume that the person didn't hear you when you directed them, and repeat the instructions. If they still don't listen to you or don't do what you requested for them to do, engage them. Let them know that, you are doing this for their benefit to keep them safe, and explain to them what you would like them to do. If they still don't do it, or if they're disrespectful, or if you see them bullying another child, they absolutely should tell. And we used to call it tattletaling, but now, it's called ratting out. You're not ratting someone out. You're keeping them safe. And your job as a safety patroller does not end with traffic safety. Your responsibility as a leader, because that's what you are when you're a safety patroller, you're a leader. And that responsibility takes on different forms. One of them is keeping kids safe from being injured or emotionally injured by bullying. And if you instruct the person to stop and they don't, it's your responsibility as a leader to tell an adult who can stop that before damage is done. Whether it's safety in the traffic realm or in pedestrian realm, or whether it be bullying.
We always say the role of a school safety patroller is not to direct traffic. The adults can do that, but it's to direct the other children, the other students.
So, correct. Whether it's walking through a covered bridge or telling them to stop being mean to someone. Those two things are, both, they go hand in hand as a leader.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, Karen, I want to thank you so much. Your courage and your leadership began at a very young age and continues now to this day. You really are your parents' legacy, Karen.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
You are. Thank you for all you have done. I've seen your work firsthand. You will, I'm sure, lifelong learner. You will continue to serve others and lift up others. And we're so proud to be able to highlight you as a AAA School Safety Patrol alumni. And, when we're back in schools again, hopefully in the very near future, I would love if you could join us to kind of make a comeback and maybe, join in another swearing in ceremony with some new young patrollers, because the pride on their faces, it never gets old. No,
it doesn't. You're right.
Yeah, how excited they are.
I remember having that pride when I raised my hand and took that oath. And that pride carried right through every single time I raised my hand and took the oath of my new office at the police department, whether it be patrol officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain. The pride and the knowledge of your responsibility. It's a great responsibility, but it's so rewarding when you are successful. So it starts young. It starts with raising your hand as a school safety patroller. Absolutely.
You've been protecting and serving for a very long time, Karen Guilbeault.
Thank you so much, Diana.
It really is amazing to think, Model Ts to autonomous vehicles. We've been going 100 years, and our hope is that this program will continue to grow for many more generations of students. So thank you so much again, Karen.
Thank you, Diana. It's such an honor to be chosen, and I really do appreciate it.